Cool.
So then I look cool.
You always look cool. All right. And we're live. What's up, Katie?
How's it going?
So I'm here with Katie Rutterer, who's one of our expert coaches. But she wasn't always a coach, was she? When did you get started with us at Old City? I vaguely remember the early days with you, but I don't remember the specifics.
Well, I joined the gym as a member in, I believe it was December of 2013.
Right after we opened.
Yeah, you were all pretty new. In fact, I moved to DC, looked for CrossFit gyms. You weren't on Google yet, because I was looking for gyms that were close to my house, and you didn't show up, but I saw you guys when I was driving down H Street one day, and I went, oh, I didn't realize there was a CrossFit gym up there, and and looked you up.
Wow,
yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, and then I remember specifically working with you, either the noon class or 9:30 in those very early days, and talking to you and just finding out what you did and what you do. And you were, still are, obviously, a yoga instructor, and you were working in a yarn store because you knit.
Yeah. When I first moved to DC, I worked at the Knitting Loft, which was down in the southeast, working some retail and teaching a little knitting classes.
That's awesome. What came first, yoga or knitting?
Knitting.
Really?
Yeah.
So where'd you pick up the knitting thing?
I taught myself how to knit in I don't know. I want to say it was probably like 2005 or so. A long time ago. Maybe even 2003. That I picked up a book and started teaching myself, and it was something to do with my hands, and I was working as a dancer at that point, and
because that's what you went to school for. You went to school for dance?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was, undergrad and grad school.
Wow.
And there's a fair amount of time, like in rehearsals or during the day, where you do hang out a little bit, and so you're like stretching and doing other things, but sometimes it's nice to have another thing to do that can keep you talking to people, or like you could pay attention, but it's something to do. So
were you actively looking for something to do and you found knitting, or did you just find knitting and think, oh, well, this will fit into the things that I'm looking to do?
I found knitting.
Yeah.
I wasn't like, oh, I need a new hobby. It just was like, this might be fun.
Watercolors or knitting.
Right?
Cool. So you sort of stumbled across it and then taught yourself. And then what was the first thing you knitted?
I believe, it was a hat. It's a purple hat. I still have it, actually. It has cat ears on it.
That's
on the
cool.
top. Yeah.
That's awesome. So that seems like a pretty challenging thing to do for your first thing. I would imagine that most people start with a scarf or something that's easy. Are hats easy? Or?
Hats are actually very easy.
Really?
I knit a lot. I made this hat, actually.
It's a nice hat.
I do a ton of hats because I think they're They're really fast. You can do it in. I have knit a hat where I was in like 2 days before, because I was like, I gotta make this for someone's birthday, and like whipped it out. But yeah, the circle thing is once you get the hang of it, it's fine.
Not too bad.
Yeah,
that makes sense. So knitting. So you started knitting just to kind of not stay busy, but just be maybe more productive, have something to do with your hands while you were in the downtime of dancing. Why'd you keep with it? Was it something intentional, or you just liked it?
I just really liked it. Yeah,
that's cool.
It just piqued my interest, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, there's always like CrossFit and yoga. There's always more things to challenge yourself with. Like you could stay easy and stay there, or you can be like, I want to knit something super complicated and learn how to do all these crazy techniques and do that as well.
Yeah.
So you can sort of push yourself out of that comfort zone if you want, but you can totally stay and be comfortable.
So that comfort zone is kind of the mindless. You can just turn your mind off and just unwind while you're winding.
I call them bus projects because
cool.
I can stop and start at any point in the project and know exactly where I am when I pick it back up.
Got it.
So if my stop comes up, I can jump off the bus, or if something happens and I need to get up and leave. It's not complicated. It's easy to pick up and put down.
Yeah. Where if you were executing a very elaborate technique, you'd have to finish. You'd have to get to a stop.
I have to get to the end of the row. Like, nobody talk to me for the next 2 minutes. I need to make sure that I get all these yarn overs in there, and then I can talk to you.
Cool. So you joined the gym right after you and Sam moved from Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? So
Yeah.
2013, you moved here from Arizona.
From Arizona.
And that was because Sam, her husband, for those of you who aren't in the know, that's because Sam's work moved?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And then so you were dancing in Arizona? How'd you know to look for CrossFit? When did the CrossFit journey with you start?
I started CrossFit in, I think it was February of 2012.
Okay. Wow.
And so I took an intro class and started with a gym out in Arizona, and started doing stuff there and liked it. So that when we decided to move to DC, that I knew that I was gonna try and find a place
That makes sense.
that I could do that.
So after college, you danced through college. Did you do professional dance when you graduated from college?
I did. I did some professional work, toured with some places, and then I took over direction of a small company in Tucson.
Wow.
For a few years after grad school.
Like a dance production company?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I worked as an artistic director.
So you did all the choreography and...
I didn't do all the choreography. It was more of like deciding what we were going to do and then like hiring people to do the choreography. Sometimes I did it. Sometimes I brought other people in. It was more just... And then just like all the nitty gritty like scheduling rehearsals and writing grants and, all that kind of behind the scenes kind of stuff.
It's awesome. So you did that for how long?
I did that for I think 3 or 4 years, from like 2008 to 2012.
Wow. Okay. So then, all the while you're getting yoga certified, you're teaching yoga, you're doing yoga a lot.
I did my yoga teacher training in 2010, and it was like a long process over the course of the whole year.
Okay. Right. And then you started teaching. Did you go to yoga certification to become a better yoga practitioner yourself, or was it with the intention like, no, I want to teach, I want to pursue this passion?
It was more of just to explore yoga a little bit deeper. I wasn't quite sure. And the way I did it was you had to do this intensive first, which was just like 100 hours of intense practice with like certified teachers.
Okay.
That qualified you to sign up for the teacher training, but you didn't have to necessarily do the teacher training.
Right.
So I signed up for this intense workshop because I thought, well, whatever. I don't know. It sounds interesting.
For sure.
And I like physical challenges, apparently. And so I did that. And then at the end, a bunch of people were signing up, had done it so they could do the teacher training. And they sort of convinced me, like, hey, you should do it. Like, you learn a little bit more. And I was teaching some dance at the time. So
okay.
I was used to teaching. I knew how to stand up in front of a group of people and tell them what to do. I just didn't know how to tell them how to do yoga because that was very different at the time. So
yeah, that's really interesting because one of the themes of your life, as far as I know it, is just this theme of being a teacher, being a coach, and being kind of a leader of groups of people. And I ran into a mom who was part of our gymnastics family. She stopped in our gym because she thought that's where the gym was, and then she went on to A10, and she was like, oh, does Katie Rutterer teach here? And I was like, yeah. She's like, wow, she's awesome. So when you were teaching dance, did you connect with teaching then, or is that something that you just kind of started to explore and then realized was kind of a passion, or have you even realized it's a passion? Or
yeah, I did. I think that's why, like, when people were saying, oh, you should do the yoga teacher training, I thought, I do enjoy, like, that moment when somebody gets something, when I sort of talk about movement or something and I can see it connect in somebody's body and their mind and they get it, and that's pretty fun. I like getting up and throwing my body around and being silly. I'm still I'm like a very silly teacher, and I love that a lot. It's I think I resisted it for a long time, but in yoga we talk about your dharma, which is your work, what you're supposed to do, The Bhagavad Gita talks a lot about that in terms of like, figuring out what your work is and doing it well. And all of the teaching opportunities in my life have literally fallen into my lap.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been a few times I've pursued some stuff like a little bit, but for the most part, teaching has constantly followed me around. Like an opportunity has been there, and so at a certain point, I was like, I think maybe the universe is telling me that this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's like people just keep being like, hey, you want to teach this? Do you want to teach this? And you said, hey, do you want to teach CrossFit? And I was like, I don't know. And so like that kind of stuff has happened to me a lot with teaching opportunity.
Right.
And so it's just made me constantly be like, yeah, I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like,
yeah, and this is a concept I want to explore much deeper in a little bit once we sort of get through your history. But this idea, it seems like you were just kind of just open. You were present to opportunities, and when they presented themselves, you realized that you should take it, or that it was there. You saw that there was the opportunity when the opportunity presented itself. Sometimes it's really direct, but sometimes it's a little more subtle, like a bunch of people signing up for this thing, and you're not exactly sure what it was, but because you were present, because you were there, you noticed it, and you had the mindset to be able to take advantage of it. Where if you were like less mindful, less focused, you would just kind of be doing your own thing, and then maybe you leave and you never see that line form, or you never notice the people who are signing up, and that opportunity that changed kind of the course of your life in a way just kind of vanishes. Maybe you stumble across it later, but anyway, I don't know if that's a question.
Well, I'll say that, so that first 100-hour workshop that I took was three separate weeks. I think it was like January and March and May or something, of like six days of intense practice that equaled 100 hours. After that first week, and it's intense. I mean, it's like the end of like a really long, crazy workout, where you're just like spent, but you feel great, but you also are like crying because you just like feel great and terrible at the same time, if that makes sense. And I remember being in Shavasana, and the teachers were talking, and they were saying like, oh, you've passed through like this first level, and you should mark this with something, like some kind of talisman or some kind of idea. And part of that week was just this, like, for me, stepping out of myself a little bit, because I felt like I lived so fearfully and so, like, behind a big wall and, like, just shut down, just, like, constantly, because I was so scared of everything in the entire world all the time.
Really? So while you were leading, like, while you had a pretty significant leadership position in this dance company, and you're teaching and you're being, really putting yourself out there, you still felt like you were kind of closed off, like you weren't yourself? Wow.
And one of the things is like, so like stepping into what you're fearful of. One of the things I'm scared of, or I'm actually pretty good about it these days, is needles, which is kind of funny. I have a lot of piercings, and I have several tattoos.
Yeah.
So that was when I got my first tattoo, and it was this one that says "Be bold."
Wow.
And so that came out of that first week, and I also behind this was this: I'm going to say yes to everything for a year.
Wow.
Everything that's especially, and those things that are scary, but I'm going to try everything.
Yeah.
And do it. Right. And then I can decide whether or not I like it, but I'm going to like step into it.
Wow. So early on through the intensive yoga year training, it was year, or it was a set number of...
Yeah, so it was like, it was over a whole year that 200-hour certification process happened. So very early on in that, you kind of were challenged to create the mindset of being open to these opportunities. Yeah. Or just being open to what's coming your way, that a change is coming, and to sort of embrace that change. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's awesome. And like do things that really scared me. Yeah. And so the tattoo, was there any like other
obviously signing up to be a yoga, like the yoga certification sign up was another one. Was there anything other that big that sticks out in your mind?
No, I think just after that, like I said, I wasn't so sure I wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
But, you know, like I said, after doing the certification, that studio where I practiced and did the certification, they said, ooh, you should be we'll put you on the sub list. And then a class came up, hey, do you want to sub this?
Wow.
And it was terrifying. I didn't want to. I didn't want to take this class. And, I did that. And a few other teaching opportunities that came my way that I didn't want to because they were really scary.
Right.
But I did them because I just kept thinking, no, this is, you gotta learn, you gotta do it.
So did you do the dance studio management? Did you do that for the rest of your time in Arizona, and you kind of gave that up when you moved, or was that something that wound down as yoga instructing wound up?
I think if I had stayed in Arizona, it probably would have it was kind of naturally winding down a little bit,
right.
But then moving was a good opportunity to create that
makes sense.
a little bit of a break there.
And so when you by the time you moved, were you a confident yoga instructor? Were those fears gone, or were you still kind of building yourself up?
I mean, I think actually they're always still there. I don't know if
true.
I should say that, but I feel like I'm a fairly confident teacher. Like I'm okay with standing in front of a group of people, but I still am. I still like doubt myself, or I still have those moments of like,
for sure,
what the hell am I doing? I have no idea. But definitely when I moved, I was confident enough to, to feel like, oh, I think I could go to DC. I mean, I had no idea what the yoga scene was like here, but I felt confident enough to like go to a studio and say, hey, can I teach for you?
Right. Yeah.
Do that.
It's really interesting what you said about the idea of kind of always being afraid and always feeling like you don't know what you're doing. I think that's the sign of a really good coach in a way. It could also be the sign of a really bad coach. But the more you learn you don't know. And then it's that horizon of what you don't know that's a little fearful. Like what if that scenario of what I don't know comes up, and how do I handle that? And one thing that I really respect about the way you coach, and basically every coach that I've interacted with and respected, and certainly all the coaches at Old City, it's like if you ask me something that I don't know, I'm going to tell you I don't know, and then I'm gonna really work hard to try to figure it out. But I don't know the answer to that. That's a really good question. Let me go figure that one out. Because you don't know something doesn't mean you're not a good coach, right? It just means that you haven't gotten that far in your education yet, right? So I think that's a really common fear. And actually, in the business, I had a very similar fear. I started the gym and it was going pretty well, and then we ran into some challenges, and then we worked to overcome those challenges, and then I felt like I was doing really well again. And I was talking to my friend who runs a pretty successful gym, and I was telling him, I was like, I don't really think I know what I'm doing. He's like, don't worry, nobody does. And he has a network of people who run $1 million businesses, bigger than that, smaller than that. And one of the things that's in common with every time we meet up is this idea that everyone out there is just kind of winging it, and maybe winging it is a little too extreme, but it's this idea that the only thing you can do each day is your best. Like, all I can do when I wake up is my best effort. When I come into the gym, my best effort when I wake up and do work for the gym, when I go and I coach, all I can offer is my best. And then I owe it to the people that I work with and the people who work with me to make my best better every day. And I think if I'm not doing either of those, I'm doing both our members and our team a disservice. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I use that kind of stuff a lot, where I think about, because sometimes I think about like, okay, what am I offering the world? Like what, trying to look at examples, and then I think like, oh no, this is like, the world has never been like this in this moment and with me in it. And so yeah, just kind of trying to figure it out along the way. And that same thing where they're like, there is no blueprint of like, if you do A, B, C, D, this will happen. That's not a guarantee. And that, everybody wants a blueprint, but we don't have that. And the sooner we accept that, like, well, it's really scary. So some people don't want that to accept that, and I get that. Like, that's fine. You don't have to. But for me, remembering that, yeah, we're all figuring out as we go along, and that no one's perfect is a great reminder. Just
Right.
We're all messy humans, and and so we try stuff, we fail, we come back, we try stuff, we try something different, and working from there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think it's first recognizing that you're not perfect, not you, but like me, I'm not perfect, and I recognize that no human is perfect, and that it creates this humility that if I try my best, I know that my best is sometimes not going to be good enough, and I'm going to disappoint people. I'm not going to perform as good as I could. Maybe I have a bad day of coaching. Maybe it's a bad day, a bad week, a bad month in the gym of whatever, leadership and all the things that we do in the gym. But if I'm trying my best and people recognize that I'm trying my best, having the humility, or maybe it's reducing the ego, maybe that's what it is. It's just knowing that I'm not perfect. It also gives me perspective in holding other people to standards as well. It's like if I know that I have off days, I can't then look at you and expect you never to have a bad day. It's come in and, man, Katie, your classes are always great, but today sucked. You're fired. That would seem like a ridiculous standard. And I think a lot of leaders I've had, specifically in the Navy, sort of don't have that perspective of it's okay to have a bad day, but it's when every day is a bad day because you're not trying, because you're not doing your best. It's figuring out the motivation for what's causing the underperformance. Is it just one of those days? Did you just make a mistake? Did something come up? Are you stressed in your life or whatever? Or did you stay up too late drinking and not, did you make bad decisions that led to this bad outcome? And I think that ties into doing your best. And anyway, I think it's a really important concept to explore in yourself. Are you trying your best every day? What can you do to improve your performance each day? And then how can you encourage and inspire others to perform to their best? And one thing you're really good at is creating that expectation of performance, but in a way that doesn't create judgment if the performance isn't lived up to.
Yeah, that sort of, I think for me that can be a tricky place in yoga, where I'm like, okay, we're all awesome, like whatever you're doing is great, you're beautiful, okay, now try harder.
Right.
I think yoga can sometimes fall into one or two camps of like, okay, that sort of, and CrossFit does this where sometimes, not Old City, but where it's, or people have this expectation that like, I'm gonna come in the gym, the coach is gonna yell at me, I'm not gonna get my Fran time under 10 minutes, and they're gonna tell me I'm a piece of garbage. And some people respond to that, and that they want to be coached like that. That's
right.
totally fine. But a lot of times people are afraid of that, and I say, no, we want to be encouraging. And then I think sometimes what happens in yoga, and not all yoga, it depends on the type of yoga, but we get into this like, everything is awesome, like whatever you do is beautiful, so like, your pose can be sort of, and some poses are supposed to be soft and relaxed, but then, some poses need a little bit more engagement. Or if you want to change your pose, if you are like, oh, this is the way this pose looks now, but I'd like it to be I like to go a little further into it. Well, you're going to have to work a little bit harder.
Right.
And then it's like, well, does that mean that I'm not good enough? Are you saying I'm not good enough? No, I'm saying that you just have to do a little bit more. Like, that has no judgment on you as a person, but that we have to, push a little bit.
Yeah, it's the balance of having standards of practice, in yoga, standards of, really, honestly, yoga and CrossFit are so similar. It's basically the same conversation, right? In CrossFit, we want to have standards of movement, and ensure that those standards of movement are upheld as the weights get heavier and heavier. And I might challenge an athlete to go heavier, or they might challenge me and say, hey, I want to go heavier. And maybe in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I don't know if they can do it, but let's see, right? Let's enter this challenge. And not everything is correct. If they pick up the kettlebell and start swinging and their spine is moving all over the place, then I need to tell them to stop, right? I can't be like, oh, well, that was wonderful and that was great. Like, no, that sucked. Maybe not with those words, but hey, that was, here's some good things, here's some bad things. Let's go down in weight and focus on the good things so that we can build up strength and stamina for the bad things. But it's this idea that, as coaches, we absolutely judge, movement and judge things, but it's judgment from a perspective of trying to create improvement, of trying to create excellence, of challenging people to discover more about themselves. I see CrossFit, and really, I've said this before on the podcast and just to people. I think anything that you do that's hard in life is there to provide a challenge in your life so that you can break through that challenge and become a better person on the other side. And as coaches, we have to offer a challenge, because if we don't offer a challenge, then we're not offering the opportunity for the person to get better because of the challenge, right? So not that I ever would, but if I'm coaching yoga and someone's doing a weak-ass pigeon pose, I need to challenge them to do a better pigeon, because through the practice of better pigeoning, they're going to be a better human. And it's the way that you deliver that challenge, I think, is the sign of a great coach, because every coach has their different spin on how to offer these challenges. The way you challenge people to be better is different than Jen, is way different than me, but it's all coming from the same place, right? Like, I want to see you grow in CrossFit, in yoga, but more importantly, I want to see you grow as a human, and not that, I don't know, this gets super judgmental, not that like, if you don't do challenges, you're not a good human sort of thing, but this idea that if you conquer a challenge here in the gym, then you can go out in life and you have the confidence to know that you can conquer challenges that come out there, because it wasn't as hard as what you've already done.
Well, yeah, I definitely think challenge is important. Maybe not good human, but like if you're not challenging yourself in some way, whether it's in the gym, whether it's in, your yoga practice, and it doesn't have to be a physical thing. It could be like, I'm going to learn a new skill, or I'm going to read, some, whatever you want to read, or anything at all, that you become a very stagnant individual, and
right.
You're going to get a little bit lost too, I think. Like, the world's going to start to pass you by. And I think that does happen to people sometimes, and they, I think we get those, they walk into the yoga studio or the gym and they're like, oh, I realized that I lost myself 10 years ago, and I kind of stayed, and, that was bad. Like, I got on this path that wasn't serving me, and it was comfortable, but then I realized, like, eventually it becomes uncomfortable because you recognize that, something has happened. Maybe you stayed on this pattern of not moving and you have zero mobility, and all of a sudden you're like, I can't walk down the street without hurting my knees, or, I stayed on this path of like eating a lot of junk food, and all of a sudden, like, I'm 50 pounds heavier than I wanted to be. And so then they have to, then they start to make that shift, hopefully, that, like I said, walk into the gym, walk into the yoga studio, and realize that they need that a little bit of challenge.
Yeah, definitely. I forget who it was, but it was a podcast. It was somebody I was listening to recently that framed this really, really well. They said, it was Dan Carlin on from Hardcore History on Joe Rogan's podcast. He goes, life is a verb. You have to move through it. You have to fight through it. You have to get through it. If you stay stagnant, you get defeated. And that's exactly, when I heard that, it was all of these things that I've been putting off. Oh, well, I'll get to that. I'll do that later. Oh, diet starts tomorrow. That sort of thing, right? It was, no, start now, challenge now, move forward now, because through movement is the only way that I'm going to improve my situation, I guess. And whether your situation is you're unhappy with how you look and how you feel, how you move, if you're, unhappy in really, like, basically any situation in life, it takes action to solve that problem, right? If you don't have the best relationships with your friends or your family or your loved ones, doing nothing isn't going to improve it, right? Get counseling, go to a workshop, do something active to improve your situation, and it's going to improve, right? Or it's going to change, and change is better than the trajectory of no action, which is just the same, and the same almost always gets worse.
Yeah, and I feel, and one thing that I've learned throughout the years is that if you don't learn how to face challenges, whether or not you're successful or not doesn't really matter, but that you have to know how to get challenged and not back away from it. Yeah. Which is something, like, for me, that was that whole living in fear, that I backed away from a lot of challenges, and sort of just like then was like, fine, I'll just live in like this little box by myself. And then I was like, oh wait, but I'm not connecting with others. I'm probably losing out on like opportunity to further myself, like in my career or as a person, and realizing that stepping out, learning how to face a challenge is super important.
Right.
And in the CrossFit gym and the yoga studio is a lot of times where people learn how to face something.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like, yeah, if you can do this stupid workout we have today, they're not stupid, but like I always say that, like, if this is the hardest thing that you have to do today, great. And then tomorrow when you have a challenge, with a person, you can remember, like, oh, I'm strong, I know how to do, I know how to sweat, I know how to cry, I know how to, be out of breath and feel like I can't do one more and do one more.
Right.
And so, maybe that thing that's happening in your office with your coworker won't seem as daunting.
For sure.
You'll just at least know how to face it a little bit better.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I look at challenges from two different ways. There's overcoming the adversity of a challenge, right? That situation where the barbell's on the ground and you have to do another squat clean, or maybe 10 more squat cleans, and then you have to run a lap, and you do it, and you win, and that's overcoming a challenge. That's great. But I think it's also equally great to be defeated by that challenge, right? To look at that barbell and to see 30 seconds left on an AMRAP and to not pick it up again, to be weak in that moment, and to reflect on that moment, and to think like, oh man, like I got beat. Today kind of won. This workout kind of won. I had more, but I couldn't tap into it. And that creates an opportunity to explore like why you didn't push yourself further. Maybe you don't have a great relationship with pain. Maybe you're a really big negative self-talker. Like these are basically like me, right? Like I look at that barbell and I think all the negative thoughts, like, oh yeah, I'm so tired. I don't want to pick it up. It's going to hurt real bad, blah, 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 blah. And when the timer runs out, I feel this immediate sense of relief, like, yeah, I got out of it. But then as I'm kind of sitting on the ground reflecting on my performance in the workout and just who I want to be as a person, I'm a little disappointed in myself. Not something that I'm going to carry around and mope home because I missed a rep, but just it's an opportunity that I missed to challenge myself to be better. And by missing it, it made me aware of this tendency that I have of just continuous negative self-talk. So maybe the next time I'm in that situation and I start negative self-talking, because I failed, I'm now aware. And now maybe I don't do 5 reps in that 30 seconds, but maybe I pick it up and knock out 1 more. And maybe instead of 30 seconds, that negative self-talk doesn't kick in until 15 seconds. And it's just a constant way to evaluate who you are and to improve who you are, right? And to me, that can be taken super judgmentally in that I'm trying to improve who I am relative to who you want me to be, but really what I'm doing is trying to improve who I am relative to who I want to be, relative to the standards I have for myself, right? If I were to sit down and write a journal of my virtues, quitter wouldn't be on that list. Yet I quit all the time. And so developing the awareness of when I quit happens at extreme challenge, right? Like oh man, you quit watching that Netflix show, you weakling.
You quit smoking, you quitter.
That's right. But it's like, yeah, that was a 6-minute AMRAP, and you quit in that last minute. Like, be better than that. Challenge, are you a quitter or are you a winner? And that, to me, that's my relationship with the challenge. And I think that's why it's really, really important to constantly seek new challenges. Like you were saying with the knitting, once the comfortable gets too comfortable, it's no longer a challenge. It just becomes something that you can do mindlessly, which is important too. But what's the next challenge? I think that's cool. So, what a perfect segue. So your next challenge after yoga instructing was CrossFit. Was doing CrossFit and then coaching CrossFit.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things, I'm going to back up a little.
Yeah.
I'm going to back up, hopefully not too much, but one of the things that yoga gave me was this opportunity to like redefine my relationship with my body.
Oh, interesting.
So as a dancer, I spent years standing in front of a mirror, moving and judging everything, which is great. I mean, well, okay, I'll just keep going and then we can come back. But like, that can be rough. And I think I was one of the lucky ones. There's a lot of people are like, oh, dancers have a lot of problems with body issue, and they do. And there's some outside pressure, and then there's like so much internal pressure. And no one ever said to me like, oh, you should lose weight, you'd be great. But like I put that on myself.
Yeah.
And so there was this constant like, looking at myself in the mirror, not even judging the movement, but just being like, I look gross, like every day, just
right.
like all the time, and just like feeding that into the way I thought about myself and everything, just being like, oh, you're so terrible, and then letting that sort of then define like what I did. So I looked at exercise as a thing that I had to do. I went to the gym and I got on the elliptical because like I had to be skinny because that's the way the world worked, and like everything would be better if I was skinnier or what,
Yeah, so exercise was to fuel that body image. It was never.
Yeah, it was a punishment, and like that kind of thing that I still see now, and now it makes me so sad because I'm like, oh, I know how that feels, and I'm on the other side of it, so I get it, but like at the same time, it makes me sad. Like this, oh my God, I ate goldfish today. I better get on the elliptical for an extra 10 minutes today, and like, it's such a slog and so boring, and like exercise is terrible. I hate it. It's so boring.
Right.
Like everything, it was, and that's why I liked dancing, because it was something to do. And move. Like, I didn't mind the movement, but I just needed something for my mind to do at the same time. And so yoga was helpful in that, it's like slower, but at the same time, I was definitely thinking about things. And, I found a good teacher that I really liked, who was like giving alignment cues and talking about what's happening in the pose versus, okay, take this pose, and then like nothing's happening in the class, and you're like, am I doing this right? Like, what's happening? What are we supposed to be doing? People who have taken my class know that I talk a lot for that same reason, just to kind of, maybe too much, but I'm working on it. But, to kind of fill that space a little bit, just to like ease people into stuff and give them something to do at the same time, because they're actually not still, they're very active poses.
Yeah.
But so then I realized when I slowed down and I listened that this was happening. Like, I just didn't realize it, or I just didn't like give it a face.
Yeah. So it was happening. You were going through all this internal judgment, and it was operating. I mean, certainly you were conscious of it, but you weren't like totally aware of it in the global perspective, right? Like Katie, talking to Katie then would, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, just like this concept, like, oh, you're ugly, you look terrible, you're so fat, like all of these things that were just like, it's just on a loop
Right.
that I think I just got used to it as
Yeah.
well. And when I slowed down and listened to it and like just really thought about it, I thought, this is awful. Like if I said this to another person, that'd be so mean. Like that'd be so rude and terrible. And I read something at one point, and it was a joke, but I loved it. It said, "Don't say bad things about yourself behind your back."
Yeah.
And that kind of made me click in and I thought, would I say this to other people? And I think a lot of people do this, where it's like you say things to yourself that you would never say to another person,
Right.
because you recognize how mean they are.
Yeah.
But you say them to yourself, and you think it's okay. And when it was just a big, it wasn't like one big day light bulb. It was a gradual kind of like, and again, going back to this like living in fear, I realized that my biggest judge was myself.
Yeah.
And that I was in so much fear of other people judging me, but actually was in so much fear of myself and what
Yeah.
I was thinking.
That's probably true with everybody. I mean, everybody, you're afraid of other people judging you and thinking that you look silly, but only because you're judging the way they're judging you. It's like because you want to be liked by other people, or because you want other people to think you're something. And it comes from a place of need, like I need, or I want, and not a place of like I am, right? Like
Yeah.
this is me.
And then I lived in sort of this like very polished exterior, where I was
Yeah.
just like trying to put forth this like very false or like very practiced demeanor, and was never real around people because I was afraid of
Yeah.
like what that would look like,
And
what
that's-
happened if I fell apart in front of somebody.
And it's crazy because when you live in that fake world, you're making it a reality, right? Like you're afraid of falling apart in front of people, but you're in the process of falling apart in front of people, But then when you take action to sort of improve your perspective, improve your self-talk, your self-worth, all of the judgment that you put on yourself, now you're less likely to break down in front of people, or you're in a better situation for other people. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
So,
and then you can have like real relationships
Yeah.
and like actually connect with people, which I was totally missing at the
Right.
time. Like I just didn't know how to do it. And I realized like, oh, it's totally me. Like I have this mask
Right.
on that is hiding myself from most people.
and you think the mindfulness approach of your yoga practice kind of helped create that perspective?
Yeah, because again, it was like I tuned in and I recognized that I was the one like being really mean to myself, and that
Yeah.
I was what I was so afraid of, and and then just tried to shift that, which was a practice in and of itself. It certainly was not a like, okay, I'm mean, great, now I'm nice.
Right.
Like that was not easy.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, that was like 30 years of like work. Not 30. I didn't start like in utero, but all these years of doing that becomes a habit,
Mhm.
and like any other habit, you have to break it, and you have to like you have to be mindful that it's happening, and then make that shift. And so that I think that's where the mindfulness helped. Like I started to notice more, like, hey, that's happening, stop it, and then having a new habit to put into place to switch that.
So were you noticing? Did you start this awareness of what you were doing to yourself while you were still dancing? And
Yes.
So walk me through how you started, the process of creating a better mental framework for yourself. So
I decided, I don't know where this came from, but I made a list of things that I could do, things that were awesome.
Yeah.
It started one day. I took a yoga class where we did a 10-minute headstand, and I've been working on headstand a lot for a while, and we had been building, and the teacher said, we're going to do 10 minutes of headstand. Come out when you need, all the instructions there. But this was like an advanced class where, this was, like I said, we had been working on it, and I was like, oh my God, that's so long. And but we'll see what happens. And I got into it and did it, and it was just like the best thing, it was like, and I was like, that was pretty cool. Like,
Yeah.
I could do that. And so I made this list. You did a 10-minute headstand. Like, you can do, it was like all these things that I liked about myself.
Yeah.
And then when I found myself having those moments of like, you're stupid, then I'd be like, no, you can.
Yeah. Was that list all things like, I can do a 10-minute handstand, I can do these physical things, or were they judgments about yourself that you did like? Like, I like my hair, I like my whatever. Was it, because it sounds like a lot of the judgment that you put on yourself in dance was, body image, that sort of stuff. Like, oh, I should be skinnier, like this should be bigger, this should be smaller, that sort of stuff. So on your affirmation sheet, were there like things that you liked about yourself appearance-wise?
I don't totally remember, but
Yeah.
I think it was both.
Yeah.
A little, because like it did start in this physical, I think a lot of the self-talk was physical, but it was mental too. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a lot of like, oh, don't raise your hand and like in class and talk because everyone's gonna think you're really stupid because you are.
Right.
So, there was some of that too. Like, I think, it sort of just bled into every area of my life.
So you started creating a list of positive virtues, of accomplishments.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
then you just pull that out whenever the negative self-talk kicked in.
yeah. Yeah, and like, memorized a few of them
For sure.
so that I could just bring that in. And then sometimes had to reread it and go back to it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was just like the same one every day,
Yeah.
just like, I'm just going to come back to that again and again. But just trying to like I said, break that habit and make that shift.
Wow. And then, so you started to make some traction with that, and that started to work? Was it just getting better and better at doing that process? Was it just iterating on that process and noticing sooner and rejecting the negative self-talk faster with a ever expanding list of amazing accomplishments? Or did that turn into something else, or did you bring in other things to help sort of sway the tide?
I think it was mostly that for a while, just kind of riding that wave and staying with, all the same things I've been doing in the world, and just trying to like make that shift. And at the same time, I was still, then working on that, like being bold and stepping, a little bit more out into the world. So not only am I like trying to push through that boundary of fear, but I'm also trying to like let go of judgment and just like let things happen. There. So they were sort of feeding into each other a little bit. But I think then like that helped me make that jump into appreciating like what my body could do and enjoying myself that way of like, okay, I enjoy being out of breath, not because it's like, oh, I'm getting fitter, or like I burned some calories, but like because I'm like working, and that's feeling a little bit of that endorphin rush because it was like just something fun to do versus like I have to do this.
Right. It's like you changed when you change the perspective of why you're doing something, then you change the what that thing means. So for exercise, if you're just showing up to lose some weight for something that probably subconsciously isn't a really good reason, but consciously it's super important, or maybe it's the other way around, right? When the value you place on something is not that important, then you don't put any effort into it. What was your perspective? So your perspective on exercise, once you sort of made this shift, was it more focused on like adding more things to that list of awesomeness, or was it just the challenge, like looking for new challenges?
It was a challenge. Like all of a sudden I was like, okay, now I'm into like a challenge to see if I can do it versus that sort of like punishment aspect.
Right.
But like, hey, what? I always wanted to like run and like run a 5K. So it was like, okay, rather than being like I should run because runners are skinny, it was like, now I wonder if I can like work myself up to running a 5K, just because like that seems hard.
Yeah.
And signing up for one and being like, okay, now I'm gonna like see what that's like.
Right. So it sounds like the list, the accomplishment list, helped create a mental framework that transformed your body from like your perception of your body from what it is like in the mirror to what it can do
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
what it can be, right? Like in the future, like what I've done, and then it sounds like once that list of what you've done grew, it started to grow outwardly to, oh shit, what can I do now?
Yeah,
Right? Like, can I run a
absolutely.
5K? Can I do a pull up? Can I do? And probably these weren't like lines in the sand, like May 3rd, 1942, this transition happened in Katie's life. Not that you were alive in 1942. But, so it was just sort of an evolution, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. So then starting to like push myself into that, became where that moved into. And so the running became a big thing.
Yeah.
Where I started running more and more. I did the 5K. Was like, that's great. The next day I was like, I'm gonna do a half marathon. Sign up for a half marathon.
That's
for
awesome.
6 months later. Did that. And then and then like probably a year after that, started doing CrossFit.
Okay.
And along that same thing, like, I was like, oh, I want to be faster and I want to be stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was able to walk into the CrossFit gym and go, okay, now I'm ready for this. I mean, I was like, no, I'm ready for this.
Right.
But I think, that's where that kind of led to.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Do I would imagine that you're never cured of those negative self-talk. You're never fully cured of that image that you developed as a dancer, right? Like looking in the mirror, like, oh, if only I was skinnier, if only I was this. Does that still exist is it possible to totally eliminate it?
That's a good question. I feel like maybe it is possible, and it still pops up for me.
Yeah.
A fair amount.
For sure.
But again, I kind of try to keep, some days are better than others, but like kind of trying. I mean, these days now it's not like, oh, you look so fat. It's more like, oh, I wish my arms were bigger. Man, I wish I looked more jacked. But
that's incredible.
Why don't I have more definition in my quads? Or like, I want a better butt, but
yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because it's really fascinating, and I have a similar story with my relationship with pain. Right. I mean, I grew up swimming my whole life, and swimming is basically how hard can you push your body every single day in practice, and the person who can push themselves the hardest every single day typically swims faster than the people who don't. And so all through, and I started swimming at a fairly high level. I mean, 8, 7, 8, 9, all the way up. I mean, to the point where I remember my 7th grade year, I had to take a break because I was burnt out. I was 11, burnt out from swimming when you're 11. And but when I started training back in high school, 8th grade, and then through high school, I just remember every time I got to that point where it was like cross the threshold or kind of pull off the gas a little bit and dive deep into the pain cave or not, it was always not. It was always the choice not to, because there was something inside that was just stopping me from going there. But when a competition came, I went there because I wanted to win, and I wanted to do that. But the problem was, since I wasn't there every day in practice, I would start losing and I wasn't performing as well because I wasn't, I didn't have that relationship. And I probably struggled with that my entire high school career without, there would be days where I'd stumble into it and I would just, the stars would align and everything would be perfect and I would have the positive self-talk and I had the right meal before, whatever it was that put all the dots in alignment, and I would crush it. I would go deep into that pain cave and I would live there and I would love it and I would enjoy it. But then the afternoon practice, I couldn't tap into it again. It wasn't on demand. It was just whenever it came to me, whenever the inspiration came to me, I had a brilliant performance in practice. And then it started to be the same way in meets, where I couldn't even tap into it in meets because I was, like, for whatever reason, I was just afraid of it. I didn't even know. I didn't even have the awareness that this was happening. I just knew that I gave up in practice and I should try harder. But I didn't realize, I didn't connect it to the fact that I was deathly afraid, not deathly afraid, but I was really afraid of going deep into that, exploring that pain. And it wasn't until college I read the Lance Armstrong autobiography. And whatever Lance is today, in 2002, you couldn't have found a bigger idol, you know, especially I was from Texas, he was from Texas, you know, anyway, he was basically the biggest hero you could imagine for an athlete. And in his book, they were talking and they were saying, cycling is so hard, Lance, there's so much pain in it. You know, what pleasure do you get from all of this training, all of this pain? It's pleasure. It's like, I don't get pleasure. I don't do it for the pleasure. I do it for the pain. And then something just switched in my mind, and it was like, oh, wait a minute. The pain isn't something that should be feared. The pain is something that is there to be explored. The pain is there because I want it to be there. And then over the next year and a half, and then when I found CrossFit and beyond, it was exploring that relationship with pain and learning, like changing the 30 years of negative self-talk that pain is bad to creating a new relationship with pain, saying that pain is good. Pain is how I learn about myself. Like all the concept of challenge that we had, the whole conversation around challenge is the exact same conversation around pain, right? Pain is the challenge, overcoming this pain, getting more pain, wanting more pain, enjoying that point in a race where your arms start to feel wobbly and the water feels like cement and you still have another 75 meters to go in the race, but it doesn't matter because you're there, you're in that deep in that pain cave. And it's really interesting how long the evolution of the mind takes to break down these things that we build up. You know, like for you, it was a lot of these body image things that just get built up and built up and built up. And then it takes a decade to have control of it again. Maybe some people a little shorter, maybe some people a lot longer. And for me, I mean, it's still something I struggle with all the time. I mean, I'm in the middle of a workout, or sometimes I don't even get to the workout because I look at the workout and I'm like, man, that's going to hurt a lot. And I catch myself in that struggle all the time, and I try to be better with it, and I am better with it today than I was 10 years ago. But still, it's interesting how these things always just linger, and how you might learn a tactic, or you might learn an approach, or you might learn some methodology that makes it better, that improves it, but it never really, I don't want to be pessimistic, but it seems like it never really goes away.
I think that goes back to also this idea that, that nobody's perfect, or we're all just trying to figure it out. Yeah. So that's also, something that I remind myself of, is like, oh, we're all, like, everybody's suffering. There's a story about Buddha, we're going to bring it back to yoga, where there's a woman has lost her child, and she's suffering, and she says, she asks for help, and the Buddha says, well, find me somebody who is not suffering, and she can't find, because everybody has their own battles.
Yeah.
Like they, everybody's constantly fighting their own inner demons, or outer demons too, but like, the teaching being that, like, we all have, and everybody's on a different level, I mean, there's no comparing of, like, who's suffering the most, or, like, who's got the worst situation, but just that remembrance of that we're all fighting our own battles, that for me helps with compassion, and remembering that, we're all human, you know. Going back to that, like, we're all connected too, and even though you might look at somebody and be like, they're so amazing, like, how do they get through, and they have their own thing for sure that they are fighting through, whatever that is.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think often, especially with Instagram and social media, and you see so much of people's fake lives, or the lives, their best moments. I'm not going to put a picture on Instagram me failing in something and being, you know, like totally distraught. Like the pictures on Instagram of her, like me doing things that are awesome, right? Super cool things. So you see the highlights of people's lives, but you never see the lowlights. And so you build this imagery of people in your mind that says, oh, well, Katie's perfect. Like she works out all the time. She looks great. She's this, she's that, she's that. But they don't see the struggles that you go through or they don't see the struggles that you're overcoming to be there. They don't see the inside, like, I really don't want to be here today, but I'm going to put on a good face and, you know, make it work. They just see the highlights.
Right.
The
Yeah.
highlight
Nobody
reels.
sees like the messiness or just the mundane of the rest of the day, or even like the mundaneness. You know, you might be like, here's a video of me like doing some back squats. It's amazing, but like they haven't seen the 10 years of work you've put in to get to that place, or you know, or even like all the accessory work that you did before you did those back squats. You know that. So it's like, oh no, it's not just going to the gym and like do some back squats for Instagram. It's like, no, I was at the gym for, you know, 2 hours or whatever, you know, to get, and then all the stuff before then. And then after that, you know, I still had to like do my laundry and, you know, walk home, like, you know, all that sort of in between.
Right. So what's really interesting about this conversation is it's sort of been focused around this concept of using challenge to overcome an obstacle in your life that's been holding you back in some sort of way, you know, be it body image, being relationships with pain, being, you know, I'm sure as many people as there are on the planet, there's challenges that need to be overcome. And the conversation we've been having is, all right, so there's an obstacle here, I recognize it, now we're going to use challenge to help improve our relationship with this obstacle, maybe overcome the obstacle or change the obstacle into something that's more productive and less destructive to our life. So what if you don't know, like, how do you get to the point of noticing the negative self-talk around body image issues? How do you get to the point of noticing that you have a terrible relationship with pain? How do you create the awareness in your life to realize that there's something holding you back?
Well, I feel like this might be a loaded question, but and you want me to talk about meditation?
Well, I mean, honestly, like meditation is an answer, but I'm genuinely curious. Like, is that the only answer? We can certainly dive into meditation, but like part of what I think you do really well in coaching and just as a human in the time that I've known you is this ability to be introspective and explore yourself and be able to pull those things out. I think that's really interesting, and I'm fascinated by it because, you know, I'm aware of some of my faults and some of the things I'm working on doing, but I'm sure I'm unaware of 1,000 more of them, you know, and I've been fascinated recently with the concept of exploring internal to be better externally, right? If I want the gym to be better, if I want to be a better coach, if I want to be a better business, if I want to be a better leader within the business, if I want to be better to my team, then I need to be better for myself and to myself. And if I'm not, I'm doing a disservice. So how do I improve myself? Well, I need to find those things that are limiting me and delimit them or remove them or change them. And so, yeah, it's a loaded question because I know you're super wise on the meditation front, but also you have a much deeper perspective than just meditation. So I'm curious with your experience and where you've been in life, what tactics you've employed to develop such introspection.
Well, I think, whether it's mindfulness or meditation or introspection, they're kind of all interrelated and they sort of all touch on the same thing. I definitely, a lot of times will approach this idea not in a super spiritual kind of way, unless I'm teaching it in a yoga class, because people, everyone's like, oh, meditation and mindfulness in 2017, 2018, we'll see if this holds up, it's become such a buzzword.
Yeah, for sure.
Like all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, mindfulness is the new black. Like, everyone's talking about it and how it's gonna do all the things for you. But I guess I'm like, well, yeah. It's not gonna do all the things for you, but for me, like I said, it was a lot of like slowing down and pausing to listen. Like I was kind of just like rushing through everything. So, you know, it was taking that moment every day and just sitting down and try not to stop thoughts. Again, like meditation isn't stopping your thoughts, but a little bit. Actually, I like the idea of listening to your thoughts because you're not going to stop them.
Right.
That's impossible. And I know there is this idea of like, oh, I got to sit down and not think. Don't think. Oh God, I'm thinking.
I'm thinking
Okay,
about not thinking.
Don't think.
Stop it. Cut it off. You suck.
Stop it.
I'm so
this
bad
is terrible.
at meditation.
This is the worst. And, but rather this, like, that you notice when you're thinking and you notice what you're thinking about. So that sometimes when I sit, you know, I'll start thinking, but then I notice, what is pulling me today? Like what is that thing that's pulling me off my center?
Right.
And sometimes it's important, sometimes it's not, and I'm just like, you know, unfocused, and that's fine. Like, you know, I'm just like, oh, whatever, I started to think about something random. But sometimes it is maybe something that I need to address, you know, a little bit, and I just recognize like, oh, there's this thing that's bothering me, that's there, that keeps pulling me off my center. And sometimes things pop up, like stuff that I didn't know that I was either still holding on to or something that I needed to work through. So, you know, something random will pop up and will pull me off, and when I come back and I recognize like, oh, that's this weird thing that came up, I wonder what it is that I need to, you know, and it's not like, oh, I'll necessarily like work through it, but it's that noticing where my mind is spiraling, like where it tends to go. And like I said, that's not always going to be like the answer, but it can be helpful in recognizing what tends to pull you off.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know if I've ever thought about meditation in that regard, because what I heard was this idea that when you sit down to meditate, you're not thinking about not thinking. You're noticing what you are thinking, and then once you notice what you are thinking, then you think about what you're thinking about.
Actually, idea is like you notice what you're thinking about, and then you return to the moment, and then you try and see if you can let it fly by.
Right.
And you know, so it doesn't become like a thinking period. It's
right.
Not like, oh, this is really important, I should think about it.
Got it.
It's oh, I noticed that this is coming in, can I let it go and come back to the breath and come back to the moment?
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, so then just creating that awareness of what it is that you tend to be focused on in your just monkey brain. Maybe that's your subconscious thoughts, or maybe it's your conscious thoughts, whatever it is, like you're constantly just noticing, oh, I notice that I'm thinking a lot about my grocery lists and stuff like that. Let it go. I notice that I'm thinking about how much the workout tonight's gonna suck. Let it go. And then you just let it go. And then over time, I guess where I'm getting stuck on this is the idea that if, let's back up. Let's just zoom out a lot. Why would one meditate? Like, what's the objective?
The objective is to be in the moment and to be focused on what's happening in your world at that present moment.
Got it. So meditation is I'm sure it's more than this. I don't want to define it to something very singular, but meditation is a way to connect with the present, to sort of enter this state of flow and be in the moment, and that way you can better be in the moment in life, right? So instead of when we're having a conversation, half my brain is thinking about the work I have to do when the conversation's over, and the other half is thinking about the stupid stuff I did, whatever, this morning, and then I'm on my phone. And so now it's bringing me into this conversation so that I can be fully present with you and not have all of those thoughts swimming in my mind and focus in on this.
Yeah, and what you said earlier about, life is a verb that you have to keep moving. It's that idea that I'm approaching every moment fully and I'm let go of the stuff that happened earlier, and I'm moving forward with an open mind and an open heart and open eyes, trying not to already have a prejudge. I'm not prejudging what is going to happen, later on today, but that right now, this is where I am, so I'm living fully.
That's a great point. So a lot of the way that our tendency is to bring a lot of judgment into a situation before that situation ever unfolds.
If you look at a workout and it's cash out 40 burpees, immediately you're yeah, I mean, I am too. It's just at the end of that workout you have to do 40 burpees, and you can go into that spiral of oh, this is going to be the worst, but what if you stayed, what if you tried to let go of that, and when you get there, you just one at a time, you just knock out those burpees. Yeah, and it's now I'm doing burpees, and you can be this is terrible in that moment. You can be I don't like this. I mean, meditation doesn't mean everything's great, I'm super peaceful, and it's you're still gonna get mad, you're still gonna be out of breath, there's still gonna be burpees, and they're
right.
But you might just all of a sudden be I'm in this moment, and I'm not dying, I'm doing burpees, and it's not the best thing that's ever happened to me, it's not the worst thing that's ever happened to me, it's fine.
Yeah, that's yeah, because in our mind,
I say that, but I'm working on treating burpees that way.
Of course, I mean, but it's the idea of where you are and where you want to be, right? I mean, that's basically the theme of this conversation, right? How do you move your life more towards where you want to be and less where you don't want to be, right? How do you move your life forward and not just get stuck? And a large thing, basically, I mean, not basically, our mission of the gym is to prepare you for life, right? And what does that mean? I mean, sure, it's a super vague saying, but it's also very specific, right? We want your life to be better. We want you to live a better, happier life. We want to empower you to be a better version of yourself, not only for yourself, probably most importantly for yourself, but for your family, for your kids, for everyone that you interact with. If you're a better, more powerful person, then everyone you're involved with is better because of you, right? And then imagine the impact of 100 members that we empower to be better, who go out to the world, who touch 10 people on a daily basis, and now those people are better. I mean, that's a huge impact for absolutely for positive. And going back to this concept of, the relationship with the burpees or whatever it is, our brains, we always construct the worst case scenario out of everything, right? You look at the workout and it's, oh man, immediately you think what the worst case scenario is, or when the flight's delayed and you're gonna be slow in your connection and it's gonna be tight. You're never thinking about you're never afraid, you never get nervous about best case scenario. Oh, best case scenario, the flight lands 30 minutes early, we have enough time to go to Chick-fil-A, and then we swing in and we're totally on time. No, you're oh, I'm going to miss my flight, then I'm going to miss my connection, then I'm not going to be able to make it to the rehearsal dinner, and then this is going to happen. And now you're preoccupied in that moment with all the stress of a theoretical, when that energy isn't going to change anything relative to your future, where you could be focused on things that are actually going to change your future, right? Do you need to be spending that energy looking for a different flight? Do you just need to spend that energy apologizing to your family for missing the rehearsal dinner, or whatever it is?
Very specific example. I feel
I don't know. I was trying to think of something that you had to be at. Yeah, I don't know why that popped into my head. And so I feel one of the reasons why I try to meditate, and obviously we could do more of it. One of the reasons why I try to meditate is to create that mindfulness of what is important right now, and releasing what's not important right now. Right now this conversation is the most important thing in the world, and in order to make that the priority of this moment, I need to detach from the emails that I haven't gotten to today, and I need to detach from whatever, I'm a little thirsty, or all these things that exist in the world. I just need to let go of, because right now talking to you, I mean, this is amazing. This is so important. And meditation, in my opinion, my perspective, is the practice of being more connected to this conversation, to this moment, in all moments. Like one thing you told me that was really interesting, because you mentioned meditation isn't about being happy and skipping through daisies all day. You said part of being mindful and being present is when you're stuck in the rain, to kind of realize and appreciate that you're stuck in the rain,
And and if you're like, I'm really cold, or like I'm miserable, it's okay. Like, you don't have to be like, oh, but the rain, like, it's watering the flowers. Like, you can be like, it's really cold and this isn't fun. Like, it's that was my umbrella.
No,
I don't know what
nice.
that was. but that it doesn't. I mean, I find that, like, the more I practice, the more I find little moments like that where I'm like, oh, I'm super cold, but like, that's, maybe it'll snow and I like snow, like that kind of thing. Like, I get pushed towards that direction, but at the same time, like, it doesn't mean that I don't get like pissed off, and I don't,
For sure.
I don't have those moments where like I'm depressed or I'm angry, or all these emotions that we deem negative, that we think like aren't gonna happen. Like, I still ride that emotional roller coaster, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's more of just like recognizing when it happens.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I feel like life is about making decisions in the moment for the long term, right? If you want to be happy, then you're going to skip the donut, which feels good now, that's going to give you a headache in an hour, that's going to throw you off your goals. Maybe you're not going to work out because you feel tired, and then you're overweight, and then all of these decisions happen in the moment for the moment. But no one eats a donut because it fits into their 2-week plan or whatever. Everybody wants to think that they're going to go for that salad, or eat the grilled chicken and not the fried chicken, or whatever the moment in the decision, or the decision in the moment is. The more able you are to make decisions in the moment for where you want to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years, and not where you want to be in 32 seconds, the better, the more you're able to control the direction of your life.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough, about a year and a half ago, the Naval Academy coach invited George Mumford, I think that's his name, George Mumford, who's the mindfulness coach of the Jordan era Bulls and Phil Jackson, and he brought in this mindfulness coach to teach meditation and mindfulness to these teams, and they hang their hat on this as being one of the reasons why they were able to be so great. And he defined meditation in a way that I thought was really powerful. And what he said is, life is a series of actions and reactions. And all meditation does is increase the time between action and reaction so that you can better choose the direction, right? If you had 30 minutes to really contemplate whether or not you were going to eat that donut, and really think about it and weigh the pros and cons, and like give a presentation on whether or not you're going to eat the donut, you would make the right decision because you have all the time in the world. But the problem is, we're walking by our office, mate's cubicle, and there's a box of donuts there, and we just pick it up, toss it in, no thought. And afterwards, when we get the headache, we're like, I don't think I'm going to work out. I shouldn't have had that donut. Now you start to think. And so the more present you are in the moment, the more you can have that reaction time to a specific action. Or like a traffic jam. You're driving up and you see traffic, and now you realize you're going to be late, and you start banging on the wheel and getting really mad. Well, the more present you are, the more time you have to decide if that's really the example you want to set for your kids in the back seat, or if that's the type of person you want to be, and it's increasing time from action to reaction. I think that's it's an interesting model, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, we cannot control what happens in the world around us, like, and I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier, where it's like, that's really scary to people, and like I get that, and sometimes people want to like not acknowledge that, but that actually the happier we'll be once we realize that, but we can control how we act and react. Like that's what you can control. I can't control what's going to happen later. Like I can't control the weather. I can't control, other people. Which is a big one.
Yeah.
I cannot control how you react, but I can control how I react to you.
Yeah.
And so that's my goal, is to just like be mindful of what I'm doing and work there.
Yeah, and I like the idea, you hear this a lot, a mindfulness practice or a meditation practice, a yoga practice, and honestly we should probably start calling it a CrossFit practice. Because the concept of
I think
practice...
people might revolt.
We'll see, we'll try it out, give us feedback. But I mean, the concept of a practice is that this is, you're engaging in something that has no end, right? You're engaging in something to constantly get better, right? I go to swim practice because I want to get better. I'm not trying to accomplish a skill. Like I go to class to learn a skill. Like I want to learn calculus. Oh, let me take a calculus class. Now I know calculus, right? But a practice is something that never ends, because we're always striving to be better, knowing that best isn't ever going to happen, right? Knowing that better is always, there's always a tomorrow to be even better than we were today. And that if we fall, if we relapse into negative self-talk or into whatever pattern we're trying to improve, well, good. Tomorrow's an opportunity to be better than that. Tomorrow's another opportunity to practice it being better and better and better. And I think that mindset of it being a practice and not an objective, not a class, not something that has an end, is important, because it releases a lot of the judgment that one might put on the concept of meditating. Like, oh wow, I thought too much today. Wow, I failed. No, just by the fact that you noticed you thought too much, you won big time.
Yeah, it's more of, did you show up or not? Did you put your butt on that seat and meditate? And then everything else is whatever it is. It's similar, like, did you show up at the gym?
Yeah.
Yes or no? I mean, that's it. It's not like, how good did you do? Then there's some, you can work within that, but there's that's the overall question. It's like, did you show up?
Yeah. That idea of showing up has been something, I think it's so important, because when I was an athlete, it wasn't good enough just to show up, right? Like when you swim in college, when you swim at a high level in high school, I'm sure when you do any sport, I'm sure dance was very similar, right? You showed up. You had to be there. That was non-negotiable. I showed up to every morning practice. I never consciously skipped a practice. I inadvertently slept through one or two, but I was always present, but I was rarely present. You know what I'm saying? And so I think there's, you can never win if you're not there, right? If I skip every practice, I can never get better. But if I'm present, at least I have the opportunity to have that miraculous day, right? Just being present is the first battle.
Yeah, well, what's that Wayne Gretzky quote? Is like, you miss 100% of the goals you don't...
Shots you don't take.
Shots you don't take, yes.
You miss 100% of the goals you don't make.
Like, wait, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean,
Yeah.
I know there have been days where I'm like, oh, I'm so tired, and I show up to the gym, and then like, I'm like, all right, whatever, I'll just like put some weight on the bar, it's fine. And then all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, what's on this bar? Oh, I just PR'd. Like, that has happened to me before, where I, like, honestly was like, the whole time I was like, I don't know, I'm not feeling it, I don't know. And then, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that's the most weight, or like, not always a PR, but, a lot of times it's, once I get into it, then it's like, oh, no, I did okay. It's fine.
Yeah, this concept I have, and I give to people when they're starting CrossFit, or when they're trying to get back into it, and it's just that struggle of knowing how much work it takes to get back into something, or being afraid of how much work it'll take to start something. Like imagine being brand new to fitness again and then walking into a gym. It's almost hard when you've been exposed to it for so long to put yourself in that mindset, but just I remember my first day of CrossFit. I was looking in the gym, and there was this woman, Angie, who was doing kettlebell swings with a 35-pound kettlebell, and I was watching her do kettlebell swings, and in the back of my head I was like, I will never be able to do that. holy, how long do I have to train here to be able to do that? And sure enough, like 2 months later, I'm doing that. But in my head, in that moment, it was a forever thing. It was an impossibility. And I didn't use this tactic then. I just started. Well, maybe I did use this tactic. I wasn't aware of what it would turn into. But I sort of created this advice that I've been giving to people, and advice that I certainly use myself. And it's this concept of just showing up, but giving yourself permission not to try, because often, we create the worst case scenario of everything, and often just the fear of the workout, fear of 40 burpee cash out. I don't want to do 40 burpees. I'm just going to take the day off. I need a rest day. I shouldn't be working out today anyway. I didn't get good sleep, and you start creating all these excuses and validating why you shouldn't do something. But in reality, if you just showed up, if you were just there, you'd probably do a lot better than you think you would, right? You might even end up with a PR. Like that might be the day where you connect with the squat snatch and you're like, oh wow, where you get the coaching cue that just transforms your perspective on things. But if you let yourself be talked out of showing up, then there's no chance of that. And so I've been telling myself and giving myself permission to show up and not try for a long time. And it just reduces the barriers of entry to the gym, right? Oh, I can show up. I'll do less than women's RX. I'll just breeze through the workout, like recovery day. And then of course I show up. I see Sean Chua's score on the board. You're coaching, and you're giving me that eye of like you should probably do better than what you want to do. And then lo and behold, I have a great workout. I'm covered in sweat. I did it RX. I feel really good about it, and I'm really happy I did it. But the only way I got there was by giving myself permission an hour and a half ago to show up and not try. And if I ended up not trying, then cool, I met expectations.
Yeah, there's a BKS Iyengar who is a big name in the yoga world, and he says practice and all is coming. Pretty sure it's Iyengar quote. Might be somebody else. Patabi Joyce, actually, I think.
Yeah.
But that idea that like, no, you practice and all is coming, and that
Practice
idea of
and all is coming.
practice and all is coming. So that's what you do. You show up on your mat and you do the practice, like.
Yeah.
You know,
And then whatever lessons of that day which are going to present themselves, like that's what's coming, or just the challenges are coming, or anything.
Just like that's what you have is you have your practice, like no matter what, you just do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's that idea of not being like, do I feel like it, or how do I feel today? No, you just do it. Like,
right.
And you might get to your mat and be like, oh, I can't. This feels terrible, but then you do something else, but you've done something.
Yeah.
And one of my teachers also says, Darren Rhodes-ism, and he's full of these kinds of statements, but it's shape shift to state shift. Because, and it's the endorphins, it's the science of exercise. It's like, if you feel terrible and then you just sort of like, well, I'm going to sit like this on my couch and I still feel terrible. Like there's something to be said for standing up and stretching and moving around, and maybe you're like, I'm going to do a little bit less today, but like, just doing those 40 burpees actually made me feel better because I moved my blood around a little bit more.
What was that saying? Shape shift to
state shift.
State shift.
Yeah.
It's like
it's
the
really
idea.
Hard for me to say.
Yeah. Well, it's like that idea that if you smile, it's hard to be sad while you're smiling, right? So if you're sad, just start smiling, and eventually you're gonna be happy.
Yeah.
And I just posted something about Sean Formations and this idea that just lie to yourself about something overly positive, and eventually that overly positive sentiment that you want to be true will become true. Like, I love pain, I love burpees, I love working out. Yeah, it's a lie today, but say that every day for the rest of your life, and eventually it'll be more true than it is today. And one thing that you said, this concept of just doing it, just having the discipline to do things. I lent you the book, but Jocko Willink wrote this book called Discipline Equals Freedom. And it's a book lately that I've been connecting with so well. It's been, I spent 8 years in the Navy revolting against discipline and thinking discipline was the stupidest thing in the world, and who wants discipline? And then I get out of the Navy, and then a few years later I'm like, man, discipline's really important. We should probably take discipline pretty seriously. But his thing is, his whole thing is, when the alarm clock goes off, get up. Like, hey Jocko, how do I stop eating donuts? Don't eat donuts. And it's very black and white, it's very simple, but it's just this idea that discipline is a positive thing, right? Like going back to this concept of, you know, pain being a positive, I've started to view doing things with discipline, like robbing myself of joy, because what's not being disciplined? Not being disciplined is giving in to the immediate gratification of the moment and foregoing long-term plans, right? I would rather go to this happy hour and have some beers than skip the happy hour and go to the gym and train and work really hard and then achieve my goal of getting a whatever handstand push-up or whatever my goal is. So not being disciplined is giving into the moment, and being disciplined is constantly thinking of the long-term objective. I think maybe in a simplified way of describing it, but it says when the alarm goes off, get up. It's not a choice. The alarm went off. You get up. That's what you do.
Yeah,
you don't have a choice.
Oh, and I'm working my way through it, and
Yeah.
I was reminded of a book that I've read called The Yoga of Discipline.
That's awesome.
And I don't remember who the author is, but if you Google it, you can find it. But
Yeah.
it's kind of that same thing where it's you show up on your mat every day, like that's what you do, and it also goes back to what you were talking about mindfulness being actions and reactions, and that then you can be focused on your future self. So it's that same thing. It's like, get up, go, show up, do the thing, and you're in that moment. So you're you're there. It's set up for you. You don't have to make the decision. Am I going to do it? You just do it.
Right.
Because it's there. Like that's what you do every day. You get up, you go to the gym.
Right.
Or whenever, or like work is over, you go to the gym. Like that's, rather than like, oh, do I feel like it today?
Yeah.
It's you've already made that decision, and
yeah, you don't have a choice.
There. Yeah.
It's not even something that you have a say in. It's like, oh yeah, my alarm went off. I get up. That's what I do. It's like in the Navy, if I don't know, like you have to go to watch. Like that's your job. You can't not go to watch. Like I can't even imagine what would happen if you didn't like get out of your bed and then go and do your job. Right? Like it's unfathomable. But as adults, we have a lot more flexibility in our lives, and so there's less has to be's, and there's more I need to be or I want to be. And the more we create those need to be's and have to be's, then I think we're going to be better served in the long term for it. And like, I think the snooze button is a terrible thing. I've gone from being one of those like 45-minute snoozers to I set 2 alarms and that's it, and then I get up. And I'm trying to be better and just getting up after one, but man, like I was a chronic snoozer, so this is a big win for me. But this idea of just doing it, and one thing Jocko says that his whole approach has just transformed the whole way that I look at everything. So instead of waking up and being like, oh wow, I feel like garbage, I'm super sore, I shouldn't work out, I'm like I do need a rest day. Jocko says that's fine, you can have a rest day, but it can't be today. Take your rest day tomorrow. If you wake up today and you feel like you can't train, because that's discipline. Train, don't give in, but make a conscious decision that tomorrow you'll rest. And it's a small thing, right? Like, yeah, okay, maybe you're overtraining, maybe technically that's not the right answer, but it's a small thing. Once you have decided to do something, you can't change your mind, right? I decided to wake up and work out, but I woke up and then I let myself break down. Then you're creating that concept that you're going to let your mind win. That if I can talk myself out of this in the moment with legitimate reasons, then I can certainly talk myself out of things with illegitimate reasons all the way down the future.
Yeah.
But then tomorrow comes. It's like, all right, I'm planning a rest day, whatever. What if I wake up and I feel great? Well, I'm training. I don't have to take that rest day. And that approach has been really powerful to me. Is discipline. It's one of my new favorite words at the moment. And it's just like everything. I'm not sitting here preaching like I'm the most disciplined human in the world, right? I mean that's ridiculous. But I'm more disciplined today than I was yesterday, and then I do things to become more disciplined tomorrow than I am today. And hopefully over time, I can be more like Jocko.
Well, and there's a Shambhala, the Way of the Warrior, says that discipline equals freedom. Because so like once that's your routine, like I get up, I go and work out. And then, then you can have a little bit. Once it's like in your routine and it's there and it's not a question, then you can have a little bit of freedom within there. Like, okay, maybe tomorrow is going to be a rest day, but it's not because I feel terrible. It's because I programmed my rest day and kind of thing. So then there could be a little bit of play in there.
And this concept of discipline equal freedom, I sort of have a different, I definitely agree with it, but a different way of thinking about it that I've been thinking about recently is if you live your normal life, if you live your day to day without much discipline, then every day is a really good day. You know what I'm saying? Like if I don't have discipline and I get a sleep in, cool, that's awesome. That was great. I love sleeping in. Sleeping in feels good. And then I don't want to work out today. Like that's awesome. Like today's a rest day. That feels great. I'm gonna order pizza. I really like pizza. Pizza's delicious. It's gonna be incredible. I'm gonna have pizza. And then it's 12:30. I don't have to work tonight. Maybe I'll go to the corner store, pick up a 6-pack, invite some people over, and like, hey, we're gonna have some beers. We're gonna have a little party tonight. It's gonna be awesome. And then that party goes to like 1 or 2 in the morning. That was a really awesome day. Like that was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun today. But if I do that tomorrow, then I do that the day after, then I do that the day after, and the day after, and the day after. If I live my life without discipline, eventually it spirals into me just being a fat slob who drinks all the time, who sits in my apartment and never leaves and never does anything because I don't have any discipline. If every day is a rest day, there's no day that's on, right? And then you sort of spiral down. And if you do that for too long, those days become less enjoyable. Right?
Yeah, I guess, I'm like, in that scenario, like, I feel terrible after 2 days.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm like, I feel
And then imagine you do that for a month and then you go on vacation. And now you have to do that even more because now you're on vacation. Now that open bar is calling you. Now instead of drinking at, 2, now you gotta start at 10, mimosas and Bloody Marys. Oh, this is gonna be great. But then you feel like garbage all the time. And it's like the highs aren't as high and you're in a low because you're constantly giving in. So if that's the end state of no discipline, well, like what's the state of discipline? The state of discipline might be, when I was swimming, it would be 9 months of training and like I wasn't conscious of the idea of nutrition being an important thing, which blows my mind to this day. But anyway, it would be the discipline of waking up and training and 2 times a day and weights and all this stuff. When that was over, the first day you get a sleep in 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, the first week that you have without training, that's amazing. It feels so good, right? And like a more realistic scenario is if you have the discipline to wake up every day Monday through Friday and you're in it, you're in the gym all the time and you're training, and you give yourself permission to sleep in on a Saturday, you're going to enjoy that. That's going to be so much better than sleeping in Monday through Friday if and then you sleep in on Saturday. It's just another thing. And so in my mind, this concept of discipline equals freedom is this idea that you're intentionally enjoying the concept of suffrage, like suffering now, so that when you have those moments in life that are to be enjoyed, they're amplified.
Yeah, it's like a cheat meal. It's like, if once a week I get pizza or I get a hamburger, like, you're gonna enjoy the hell out of that, and like just be in that. You'll be in the moment,
right?
And you'll really enjoy that, And it's not like, then the rest of the week I have to eat like plain chicken, like, I do actually enjoy eating vegetables because I'm a weirdo, but that I do on Friday nights. Like my husband and I will often go out, and I'm like, I'm gonna have a beer, and I'm gonna have French fries, and I'm gonna love the hell out of it.
And it's gonna be amazing.
And it's gonna be great. But yeah, like if I ate French fries, I could probably eat every day and still love them.
Yeah.
That's my terrible food.
Tortilla chips, yeah.
But like, like I look forward to it a little bit sometimes when I'm just like, oh man, but Friday I'm gonna have French fries.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and because you had the discipline in the week leading up to that Friday, those French fries felt really good. But if you didn't have the discipline all the days leading up to it, then that would just be another day.
Yeah, if every day I was like, oh, but I deserve this garbage food, then then every day I'm eating garbage food and it's
Right.
not as exciting.
And so I started with that concept of, oh, I'm gonna suffer through these days, so that the vacation days are gonna be happier, be better, right? The days when I, whatever, take a day off or give myself the day off or go on a trip, those days are gonna be better. And so I used to see the days of discipline as suffering so that I could enjoy this moment in the future better. But then, sort of like this relationship with pain, right? Then it was like, no, wait a minute. That's totally wrong. I should be enjoying these aren't days of suffering. These are days of good discipline. Like, these are days that serve me. These are the days that I actually feel really good. These are the days that I have all the energy. These are the days that I'm super productive. These are the best days I have. And when I go on vacation and I drink too much and I eat like garbage, I'm taking naps, I'm so tired, I just feel crappy, I have headaches. Those days suck.
Right? I mean, that's, there are definitely like some Saturdays where I'm like, man, I have like a weird food hangover. And I'm like, oh yeah, because like I normally eat vegetables and drink water. And then, when I have 2 beers and a lot of salt, then the next day I'm like, oh, I can't go to, I'll go and try and lift and I'll be like, my life sucked today. I'm like, oh yeah, because I had my garbage experience last night, and then I'm more motivated to go back and be like, no,
Right.
It's time to get back to work, and then you enjoy a little bit of that sweat and that breathing hard, and,
right.
Look forward to it a little bit.
Yeah. And to me, that's been the biggest evolution I think I've had in my life, is this concept of recognizing that bad things in your life are opportunities, or good things, or bad things, maybe that's not the right way to put it, but bad things being like a workout is bad, it hurts, that's a bad thing or whatever. But really it's an opportunity for me to challenge myself to become better, right? Or I want to go on a 24-hour fast. Like, being hungry is a bad thing. But no, it's just an opportunity to show myself that, I don't need to eat those chips that are right there in the cupboard. Like, I have the discipline, I have the ability not to eat those things. Which, if I have the ability to not eat those things when I'm really, really hungry, well, it's going to be super easy when I have the option of eating a salad with some chicken on it, or eating a bag of chips. Like, that decision becomes super easy because, well, when I was really, really hungry, I didn't go for those chips. So now I can make that better decision in the moment. I think that to me is probably one of the biggest mental shifts that I can partially attribute to meditation and being more mindful. It's hard to say. Meditation is one of those things that's I don't think you're ever going to be able to point the finger and be like, whoa, that one meditation session changed my life. But it's starting a meditation practice, and then you look back and you're like, whoa, when did I become more mindful? When did I become...
Yeah, I mean, and it goes back to saying, like, it's a practice, because it's like you don't go walk in the gym and then go, well, look, I back squatted after like never having worked out your entire life. And then
Right.
you're like, look, I back squatted double my body weight today. Like, That's not the first thing you're going to do. And so in that same way, it's a practice. It's like,
Right.
you have to show up, you have to do it, you have to do the work. So it's not like, I'm going to dabble in it. I mean, you can, and absolutely, like, it's better than nothing. Same thing with fitness. Like, it's better to do something than nothing.
Right.
But like, the more you can work at it, the better it's gonna be. Not like the better you're gonna be at it, but like the more it can work for you.
Right.
So that it's about showing up and being there every day, and that you might have like one really good session that day you hit a PR. Like, you might have a great meditation where like you feel so peaceful, or like, you sit for 15 minutes and you're like, I never thought the whole time, and like, you just like concentrate on your breath, and it was amazing, and you had a breakthrough, and then you're gonna chase that dragon.
Yeah.
Same day, like, you might hit a PR and you're like, that's great, and then next the next week you might be like, how did I lift that last week? That was insane.
Right.
And same thing with meditation. You're going to chase that dragon a little bit.
It's like I've played around with golf for a few years now, and it's that one time you hit the perfect shot. Like, all you need to do is hit one good shot, and you're hooked at golfing.
And I'm done.
And you're like, I wanna do that again. And I heard a professional golfer talking in an interview or a podcast or something. In the interview, he was like, do you ever get tired of hitting great shots? And no, it always feels good. It always feels good. It's amazing. And I think that's what makes meditation so hard, in my opinion, right? When you're doing CrossFit or strength, there's tangible, concrete, indisputable feedback that you're making progress. When I started, I could squat 100 pounds. Now I can squat 200 pounds. I have improved my back squat by 100 pounds. Mindfulness is sort of this, and this is where it gets a little woo-woo and hippie, and I think it's becoming more mainstream because a lot of that, sort of nonsense, I guess, if you want to say that, but maybe it's not nonsense. A lot of that stuff has been stripped from it, and people are starting to teach it, I think, like you teach it, in ways that are much more approachable, where I don't need to come in with the perspective of a yoga background or a Buddhist background, but you can just talk to me about breathe, notice, what are you thinking, in ways that don't have all of this other stuff attached to it. And I'm starting to get connected to it, and I think that makes it easier to practice. But still, it's the idea that there's a before and after. Certainly there's a before and after, how you felt before, how you feel after, how you the decisions you made before and the decisions you made after, what you noticed before and what you noticed after. But it's not quite as tangible as I increased my back squat by 100 pounds,
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of things and studies being done now, like there's definitely those neurological benefits, and you can, you read those studies and read the books, and like it's there, but you're right, it's that measurable aspect of CrossFit that they have of like, I've put, there's a tangible number, and it comes a big goal setting where we say, like, put a number, make it a thing, like make it a solid thing. There is a little bit of faith that you have to have in it, and that it's a little bit of, I noticed today, like, I waited a moment and I didn't yell at my spouse. Like, I really wanted to. But it's less measurable for sure.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, like, maybe you're a little more mindful, so you notice those, like, moments where you're like, oh, hey, I noticed that thing because I'm paying attention a little bit more.
Yeah. And for me, it's been, because I go in spurts. I go in, like, there's 2 months where I'm just meditating all the time, and it's like every day I'm doing it, and then I fall out of practice, I lose discipline on that, and then it's just, whatever, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I should meditate again, and then I pick it back up. And for me, it's always, like, I don't notice changes in the way that I behave because I don't attribute those changes to meditation all the time because, oh, well, I'm just more mature. Oh, because now I listen to this podcast, and this podcast is the reason why I changed. But it's because of the meditation that you were open. Like, one thing that you said that blew my mind, I don't think you invented this saying, but when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
No, I certainly did not invent that. Anybody who's listening to this, like, no, Katie didn't invent that.
But anyway, Katie introduced me to that saying. Do you know where it comes from?
I don't know.
It's probably some Buddhist thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Who knows? Anyway, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And you were saying that after we were talking about, you give the same cues over and over again to a lot of different people, and then that moment, that aha moment, right? When the student, when you're ready as a student to hear that tip, when you're at that point, then what I've been saying this whole time, you're going to connect with, right? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I think that's sort of like the meditation approach in a way. It's I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah. Anyway, it's meditation's tricky. It's hard to attribute meditation to the victories that you have in your life. And so that's why I think it's almost indisputable that it's positive. And that's why I think it's important to create a practice and just do it as part of your daily routine, because doing it is going to improve a lot of aspects of your life. and make you more present and make you enjoy the moments and make you understand that the pain isn't as bad as you think it is and make you understand that the happiness is much better than you think it is. It's gonna put perspective on your lows and increase your highs. At least that's my relationship with it. And so I think it's just something that people should just put into their daily routines and practice every single day, and then maybe keep a journal, maybe keep some notes, and just notice how you feel today and how you feel a year from now. And if the only thing you added was meditation, well, that's a big win. But probably meditation is going to allow you to add workouts, allow you to add more family time, allow you to spend less time on Instagram looking at other people's amazing lives and enjoy the amazing life that you have, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and like this, people come up against this idea of like, well, it's time. Like, yes, it's asking you to put something else in your day, but you just said like less time on Instagram. Yeah, like notice how much do you go on Facebook and Instagram, and like this idea of like more is better, maybe, but not if you can't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, meditate for 30 minutes every day, but if that's gonna make you like not do it, or like bring up excuses like I don't have 30 minutes to give, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 15, like some small chunk that you probably have in your day that you are watching Netflix or looking at Instagram. And it's not that those things are bad, but it's just like noticing like you probably have 5 minutes somewhere in your day that you can give up and just take a moment and breathe.
Right.
Set the timer, do not disturb, and your timer. And they're on your iPhone. I know not everybody has an iPhone, but an Android might have this too. But that there is there's free apps, like there's the meditation app that I have a couple of them, but because I'm like that. But that on the timer app, like that comes with your iPhone, there is a gong that at the end of
cool.
of that.
Yeah.
So it's not just like your meditation is over. Like there's a gong, or like what maybe it's the birds chirping or
right.
the crickets. Like
you can kind of come out.
Yeah,
peacefully.
you can. There's something in there, and I'm guessing Android probably has this too, or Google Phone or whatever. But like that it has one of its ringtones is something that's a little more gentle. That
right.
So you can turn that on. So it doesn't have to be like I don't have to get a fancy app, or a bell, my own chime or whatever. Like just set a timer, make it something that's gentle at the end, and do 5 minutes.
So what are you doing to get a little more tactical than theoretical? What are you doing in those 5 minutes? Like if you were to tell, like I'd imagine a lot of people listening to this podcast have very limited to no exposure with meditation. So I get 5 minutes on my clock. No one's around me. It's quiet. What do I do? How do I meditate?
Seated.
Okay. Like in a chair, on the ground.
You
on a
could
pillow?
either way make it something that's like if you go in a chair, totally fine. But you want to sit up tall. You don't want to sit back, against the back of the chair. So you want your pelvis to be vertical, so you're on the bottom of the pelvis. Feet on the ground, so legs uncrossed.
Okay.
Hands in your lap. You can sit cross-legged. I recommend probably most people need to sit on a pillow because like you're probably going to be rounded in
right.
your back.
So you elevate your hips maybe 4 or 5 inches above your legs, and that just makes the posture.
Yeah, like a fold-up blanket or a pillow. I like to sit. I sit on my heels actually.
Okay.
But I like 2 yoga blocks.
Got it.
So I'm high, but I'm full. My legs are folded in half.
So
That's
2
the most
yoga blocks
comfortable.
under the legs, and then your legs are folded under.
2 yoga blocks under my pelvis. So I'm sitting on those, but my feet are folded in, tops of the feet to the floor.
So you're sitting. You start the timer. It's quiet, obviously. Lights on, lights off. Does that matter?
I would say probably dim. You don't want it to be like super bright,
right.
but at the same time, it's not sleepy time. So
right.
If it's like super dark, don't turn the lights all the way off because your body might be like, it's time to nap.
Right. Eyes open or eyes closed?
I am an eyes closed meditator.
Okay.
A lot of, or not a lot, but I know there are some schools of thought that say you should do eyes open because it makes you more alert. I find that so distracting.
Yeah.
I'm like, if anything moves in my in my vision, I'm like, what's going
Oh.
on? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
definitely like, even if my cat walks in, I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, all right, I gotta.
So eyes open might be an advanced technique once you've sort of, you know, if you're looking for more distraction challenges to overcome.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So eyes closed, seated position, pelvis straight, good posture. Any other setup things before you click start?
I mean, hands in the lap or on the legs. What you want is elbows in, like, to hang down from the shoulders. But, like, again, if that makes you go like, okay, this is weird and I have to hold this.
Right.
Like, you know, you want it to be something easy.
So you want to be relaxed but in good posture.
It should be active posture.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it should be something where, like, because oftentimes what will happen is, you know, I start thinking about something, and then the next thing you know, I come
Right.
back to my breath, and I notice that I've
Yeah.
lost it, and I'm
Right.
like, oh, there we go.
But you don't need to be peak cobra posture, like bulletproof posture. As long as your posture is good, then you try to create relaxation within that posturing. I mean, obviously it's an active position, but you're not like, you shouldn't be sweating,
Yeah.
or should you?
Well, no, if you shouldn't be sweating. If you are, maybe you need to adjust. Maybe you need to work on
Right.
your mobilization a little bit. Like, if you can't sit for 5 minutes
Yeah.
without, like, crushing your spine, like, let's talk mobilizing. That's the next podcast.
So then you press start on your timer. You close your eyes. What do? Do you just wait for 5 minutes? Do you just like wait for that alarm, like peak every now and again? Is it
Oh
time
man,
yet?
I have definitely had that moment, those meditations where I'm like, what? I must have missed it. I must have missed the bell because
Yeah.
I've been here for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ding, and I'm like, oh man, that was the longest 5 minutes of my life. But I check in, intellectual self, spiritual self, physical self, emotional self, like just see where I am in that moment.
And what's the process of checking in? What is that? Like, what's the tangible? Because I'm, you know, if I'm just getting started.
Yeah, I would say you could just say, how am I feeling today? Or like notice the state of your brain. Like, and a really great way to start is to count your breath. I like that as a way to focus the brain, and it gives you a little bit of something to do,
Right.
especially if you're super new to it and you
Yeah.
just are like freaking out a little bit. You know, to count your breaths, get to 10, start over. If you
Yeah.
lose count,
Start
go
over.
start over. You
So
know?
it would be like 1, and then just do that until I get to 10.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but breathe in and out through your nose. Yeah.
1, and then all the way up to 10. Yeah, when I've done some guided meditations with you, and the concept of starting over when you get to 10 made me so mad.
Why?
When I was starting.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I was like, I did all that work, I got to 10, and now I'm just back to 1. I'm at the same place that I would be at if I failed. And I was like, wait a minute, that's kind of the point, right?
But that's interesting. I've never heard that before, but I love it.
Yeah, because like, it's so much focus and so much, in like, 1, got it, yep, all right, 2. And then you fail once or twice, you're like, is that 6 or 7? All right, 1, 2. And then you get to 10. And then your reward for getting to 10, your reward for winning meditation is to start over at 1. And it feels defeating. But then it makes you realize that you're there to practice, and that just because you got to 10 doesn't mean you did it right. Doesn't mean you can't do it better.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I don't like the concept of better, but
Right, well,
but I think this tracks into a little bit of that concept of like, I mean, it is what it is. So like, whether or not you get to 10, great.
Right. And that's,
Like,
and I guess that's what I meant by like better or whatever. It's like the objective isn't 10.
right.
10 is a number that you made up to give my mind focus, but it could have been like counting sheep. It could have been anything. 10's an imaginary number.
Yeah, 10's just
Right.
a thing. Like
But-
it's
But then you assigned me a challenge, and then I put all this stuff on that number 10, and then I got to 10, and then you just took it from me.
and so like the Buddhist teaching there would be like, oh well, then you like need to do a little more work on like letting go.
Right, exactly. Well, and that's sort of like my mindset is always to win a challenge. You know, if we're playing Monopoly, I'm not playing to have fun. I'm playing to win. If we're doing something, the objective is never fun for me. I mean, sure, it's fun, but maybe this is a bit extreme. Like I've obviously improved this a little bit.
Well, I mean, I've played games with that before. And
Yeah.
it's not fun.
Right, and I
don't
want to
play
win.
games with people like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's not necessarily. It's a double-edged sword because I do like the fact that the fear of failure is something like I want to win. I want to put forth my best effort, and I want to rise to the challenge of competing and winning and being vulnerable to being defeated and understanding that I don't want defeat, but if defeat happens, I can learn from that defeat, right? All of this is in the perspective of things, but if, like, I want to win. And so when you as meditation, when I first got introduced to the concept of meditation, it was the concept of winning. You know, like I have to win this 5 minutes. I have to get to 10. How many times did you get to 10? I got to 10 7 times. You know? And then, but like, the concept.
Panting. 1, 2, 3, 4,
1. Talking shit to other people. Like, where you
Pass
at?
out.
Where are you at? But part of the practice of meditation is recognizing that about yourself and then letting go of it. You know?
And being like, that's great, that's an asset, like, absolutely, but like, can I let go of that at some moments, like maybe in the seated practice, but like, absolutely, like, that's a great thing to have when you're playing a game or, you know, you're trying to win, you know, the trophy for your team. That's great. Then everybody's gonna be like, I want to be you know, on your team. Like, that's awesome, but it's just, I mean, it goes back to that, like, action reaction of like knowing when it's appropriate and when it's not.
Right. Yeah. Which is great. Which is, you know, why we meditate, which is why we do the practice.
Sure.
And it's noticing those things and making yourself, or noticing them and improving, you know, the trajectory of where you want to be. So a good way to start, breathe to 10. Start over, breathe to 10, and then if you lose focus, if you lose track of where you're at, then you just go back and start at 1. And you just do that until the gong goes off or the birds chirp or you couldn't figure that out and it just goes beep, beep, beep. And then you come out, you're done, turn on Netflix and start chilling again, or...
I mean, it's nice to be able to, you know, pat it a little bit on the end to have a moment of, like, can you know, step back, take a moment. But yeah, you know, you could step in, you know, then into your day. A lot of people step off that cushion and then, you know, go on with their lives. And, you know, you're going to eventually have to leave or go into traffic or do whatever.
Right.
But it's also a little bit of like, can you stretch that out? Like, can you take that feeling and how far can you get? Like, if you stand up, you're like, great, that was awesome, I feel good. Okay, it's time for me to go walk to the gym to go coach. Like, am I halfway to the gym, a car cuts me off and I'm like, fuck yeah, you know, like, oh wait, oops, I just lost all of that.
Yeah.
And I've definitely had those moments where I'm like, I felt so peaceful, and then like 10 minutes later I'm yelling at someone. I'm like, that didn't, you know, I wasn't able to hold on to that
right.
As long as I had hoped.
Yeah, and I use the breathing tactic as not as much as I should, but as a way to make better decisions when I feel myself getting ready to make a bad decision, right? Like somebody makes me upset. That doesn't make me upset. You know, like one breath, recenter, refocus on the priorities of who you want to be, get present through that breath, and you're going to make a better decision than if you just let that emotion go. And this is something that we didn't really touch on about meditation, but I think is so important. And when I was introduced to this idea, it changed a lot for me. So your your thoughts, at least, I don't know if this is definitive, but this approach to meditation, or this approach to kind of how your thoughts get created, really spoke to me. Your thoughts are a secondary, they're a cause, they are a reaction to how your body feels. So your body is out there sensing the world. Most of it's subconscious, right? You're picking up all of this data. Your eyes see the world, you send signals to your brain, and all of these signals go into your brain, and then thoughts come out of them, right? You feel afraid, you have the thoughts of being fearful because you saw something, because you feel something, because, all of these data points go in, and now they go into your brain, and your brain creates a thought because of the way your body feels. And so if thoughts are a reaction to how your body feels, learning to connect to how your body feels can be a precursor to intervening to your thoughts. So here's an example. One of the things that happens when I get mad, right? When I feel that somebody's disrespecting me, or when I feel that I've been slighted in a way, I feel my throat start to constrict, and I feel my chest sort of come up like this. And then I get mad, and I do things that I regret. I yell, I'm mean, I'm a jerk, I storm out, I slam the door, I do things that I'm not proud of. And then when that tension goes away, I return to rational thought. And you could start to think about it and be like, well, the constriction, reduced oxygen flow, which did this, which created this fight or flight sensation. But what I see it as is like these early warning flags that are going up. When I'm having a conversation with somebody and I feel disrespected, or I feel insulted, or I feel slighted, my throat starts to tighten, my chest comes up, and if I just breathe and relax that tension, I still feel the slight, but I don't feel the anger that comes with it. And so it's a way for me to get ahead of negative emotions and deal with situations rationally. Be like, I'm not sure if you realize this, but what you said I interpret as, pretty disrespectful. I'd like to talk about that, as opposed to being like, I hate you, and punch.
Yeah, and it's that moment where that you recognize, and even like you might even feel that anger, but that you take that extra moment and you don't react in your usual way,
right,
to that emotion, but that you try and like dissipate or recognize what it is. It's an emotion.
Yeah.
Is it the truth? And maybe it is. Like, maybe somebody has crossed a boundary and you need to be angry at them. I mean, anger is not necessarily a bad thing.
Totally.
But that, then you sort of judge, before you react, you take that moment and you can say like, okay, what's the appropriate response here?
Right. Yeah, being angry isn't a bad thing, but yelling at someone and insulting someone and handling something in a really negative and mean way is probably not ideal, right? Like, most people who get in fights and arguments regret the way they communicated in those arguments. And then when the anger settles, when the passion subside, then it's going back to that conversation and having a more rational, level-headed conversation. If you take a moment and breathe into whatever's constricting, breathe in whatever's tight, if you notice that the throat gets tight and the chest comes up, breathing into that is becoming more present to the moment. And whether or not you're able to actually prevent the thought from coming into your head, maybe that's a little hippie for lack of a better word, but it's the idea of just being present to the moment of how your body feels and what your body's reacting to. I'm reacting to this concept that right now I don't feel safe, or I'm feeling threatened, or I'm feeling intimidated, or I'm noticing something in my body that's causing me to think thoughts that are different than where I was a few seconds ago. Let me connect with the moment and let me evaluate what the truth is of this moment, right? Am I upset because, like what's the root cause? Are you doing something that's attacking me physically? Are you threatening my safety? Are you challenging my authority? Are you just being naive and just sort of saying a joke that I'm taking too seriously and I'm not aware of that? Connecting with my breath, taking a moment, realizing a deeper understanding of what the root cause is, and then addressing you is almost always a better solution than knee-jerk reaction. Now, if you're punching me in my face, probably the wrong answer is to let me breathe into those punches.
Right. Well, yeah, so it's like, I think you said, like, it's, you have that physical reaction, and that's very real. I mean, and it's very honest, and, goes back to, like, the animalistic nature, and our fight or flight. So it's sort of like, I'm fearful, I'm angry, what's happening? Am I in immediate physical danger?
Right.
Like, do I need to run out of this situation?
Yeah.
Maybe. Like, if
right.
you're, if there's a car coming at you, like, you're not going to be like, oh, this will be okay. Like, no, move out of the way.
Yeah.
Like, use when that adrenaline flush to run. But, like, oh, maybe it's just because, like, somebody said something, okay,
right.
then I can take a step back. I don't have to, I can let that dissipate. And, that said, even if like somebody's yelling at me and I want to just yell back because, that's the way I'm feeling, because I feel really fearful or I feel angry or both.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and even if I take a step back, that doesn't mean they're going to either. So it is a little bit of that, like, being in that moment. And then, even then, I might be like, hey, I'm going to leave this situation.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not in immediate physical danger, but, like, hey, I'm going to wait till you are a little less
right.
intense.
Because you can't control me, but you can control you, and you can control the way that you react to me. So if I'm angry and I'm emotional and I'm aggressive and I'm being rude, you, like, part of being more present is the idea of just recognizing that and knowing that this conversation is not productive, and to re-engage in a more productive environment.
Yeah, I might be like, hey, Sean's having a bad day. Let's talk about this later. It goes back to that, like, hey, we're all fighting our own battles, remembering that maybe that's my reaction. Like, oh, hey, Sean's having a rough point. Like, I'm going to, walk away.
And we've sort of gone down this path of, using mindfulness and meditation to improve the scenarios in life that are really challenging and negative and hard. I think the other path, the opposite path of the joys of life.
Oh, absolutely.
Is, if not like as important, maybe even more important, And I've had parts of my life where, like, really awesome things have happened. And, like, I know I was supposed to be happy. I pretended to be happy. If you ask me, oh, that's the best thing that's ever happened to me. But the reality is, it was kind of a meh, And, like, I remember, like, graduating college is the perfect example. It's 4 years of just hard work and, I got in a lot of trouble and whatever. And we threw our covers in the air, the hats, like, everywhere. And they came back down and I was like, yeah, I'm still the same me. Not really, meh, But in hindsight, that was the culmination of an extreme amount of work. That was the last hurrah with, all of the friend group that we had developed. And, I didn't have the full perception and awareness of like really what was gonna, like, the dramatic change that was about to happen in my life. And I didn't really celebrate the accomplishments and enjoy those moments as much as I would have liked. Like, the end of The Office was, Andy Bernard dropping words of wisdom. He said something like, I wish we knew that we were in the best time of our lives, or in the golden era, or whatever, like, whatever the saying is. I wish that we knew that these moments were going to be so good when we were going through those moments. And I think becoming more present and becoming more aware makes you realize that in the moment. Like, how do you, like, what would the advice to Andy to make seasons 1 through 6, make him enjoy seasons 1 through 6 more? Well, meditate, be more mindful, be more present of everything that's great day in and day out, right?
Yeah, and I also, like, I like to think, like, every day, sometimes, like, if, sometimes it's like I'm having a really terrible day, but I also think that there's, like, every day is a little bit of a roller coaster. Like, I've definitely been walking around and being like, oh, it's a beautiful day, and just, like, having this moment where I'm like, I feel great. It's awesome. Like, stop. It's like, oh, spring, whatever. I love spring, so I'm like, yeah, it's like it's warm, it's not hot, it's not cold. And then like later on that day being like, having a bad moment, and and it's not like it's a great day or a terrible day. Like it's most days are balanced. Like there's good things and bad things. And sometimes like it's like an awesome day, like these 4 things happened and they were amazing, and sometimes it's like, oh, these 5 things happened and they were terrible and it made this day seem awful.
Right.
But even in the most awful days, there's often at least one moment where it's like not, there's a little bit of an upswing. And to me, like that's that mindfulness of recognizing that happens. So it's not just like, oh, this day was like a constant downhill slog, that there was there were a few bumps along that road, and that I remember at the end of the day, like, oh yeah, that one thing was not terrible.
Yeah, it helps cultivate a bit of perspective, certainly. A bit of, and maybe perspective is the best way to describe it, right? Like this rain, yeah, it kind of sucks. I'm getting wet, I'm cold, I'm uncomfortable, but I also have the perspective to know that I can handle this, that this isn't that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. My clothes are going to dry, my family's safe, like I can still breathe, I'm living this wonderful life, and you have the perspective of all the positives that put this thing into its place, and how much it really sucks,
Yeah, like I had some bad news yesterday afternoon. I was on the phone with somebody, and I was like, oh, that sucks. And they were like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I was like, I mean, it's okay. Like, it's fine. Yeah. It's going to bum me out for like an hour. And I was a little bummed out for an hour. And then I was like, it's fine. Like,
right.
And I moved on. And it was like, yeah, it wasn't great. I was like, it made me really sad. But then I was just like, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So if you've never done a meditation practice, if you've never done anything, then the place to start is get 5 minutes on your phone, put it in airplane mode, set the reminder to something gentle, and sit down, put your feet on the floor in a chair, sit, on some pillows, get good posture, and just count your breaths. Count to 10, start over, and just breathe. Just notice your breath for 5 minutes. And if 5 minutes seems like it's too long, do 2 minutes, do 1 minute, and try to build up to doing 5 minutes, and then maybe challenge yourself to do 10 minutes, and then maybe start off your week with 15 minutes, and just play around with these ideas, because the more time you spend in this practice, the better, like all of the things that we've been talking about are going to be better. You're going to start to understand what in your life is holding you back, and you're going to learn mechanisms to overcome them. You're just going to understand who you are better, and the more you know about yourself, the more you can help yourself, or the more you can stop hurting yourself. And I think that's a really important point, like stop hurting yourself, make yourself better, or see opportunities, make yourself better, and notice opportunities when they come up. We didn't even get into how Katie became a CrossFit coach, but just becoming aware of opportunities. Like you may not see that opportunity. Basically what I'm trying to say is you may not see that opportunity if you're closed off. If you're open, if you're noticing things, you're going to see more in the world, and you're going to see more joy, you're going to see more happiness, you're going to notice when the flowers start to bloom. And it's cliche, but you'll have more time to stop and smell the roses. Any parting wisdom?
Well, I use this a lot, but I love it. I think it was season 2 of BoJack Horseman.
Yes.
Which is a great show. But that, and it's one of those, like, this happened at the end of the season, and I was so mad. I was like, this show, it's like, makes so much sense, and it's a stupid cartoon, but it's so good. And he's running, he's like trying to start jogging, and he's like, this is so hard, why do people do this? And I think it's like a monkey comes up to him, and he's like, it gets easier, but you have to do it every day. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so, why does this wisdom have to come from this? Because now I want to use this line, and I do, and I say it's from BoJack Horseman, but I love it.
Yeah.
It's like, it goes back to that discipline thing.
Yeah.
Just showing up, and, but that's the hard part.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hard part of anything. People who want to, like, get fit, the hard part is Honestly, like we're a CrossFit gym, and CrossFit, in my opinion, is the best way to get into shape. But really, the most important thing is compliance. Compliance to anything is going to get you better results than non-adherence to. I could write you the best training plan in the world. Like doesn't even matter. All the scientists agree that if you do everything on this paper, you will get all of your results in the fastest time and blow your expectations out of the water. But if it's something that's ridiculous that you can't fit into your life, that you can't do, that you can't comply with, that you loathe every day, that's that elliptical because you ate 4 Cheetos, you're never gonna get results. So I can offer you a more inferior program that you're gonna adhere to every single day, and you're gonna get phenomenal results. So adherence is super, super important, and discipline's a way to get adherence. And there's a million different ways to cultivate that. I think discipline is probably just the most important. Tell someone you're going to do it, and do it. Whether that someone is yourself, whether that someone is your spouse, whether that someone is a coach, just tell somebody you're going to do something, and then follow through with it. And if you don't do it today, great. Tomorrow's an opportunity to do it. And then repeat.
But then do it today.
But yeah, do it today. Yeah, if you were planning on going to the 6 a.m. and you were weak and you slept in, go to the 6 p.m. Go to the 6:30 p.m. Go to the 7:30. Do 100 burpees at home. Do something today that you don't necessarily want to do that's going to move you towards that goal. I love it. I think that's great.
Awesome.
Sweet. And meditate every day.
Yeah.
or don't. Whatever. Who are we to tell you what to do?
Wait, isn't that the point of this?
That's right. Do what we say. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening, and thanks for Katie for the time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
That was awesome.